Han Aram faces a desperate plea for guidance, but the truth about his father is that the man is finally dead, leaving him to find solace in his own company because he has always had his digital companion by his side, drawing him back into the world of Last Eden where his loyal guide Eve is waiting to greet him. And the armored avatar of Han Aram stands ready for action, welcoming him back to the game with a familiar invitation to begin. So Han Aram accepts the challenge with a silent resolve, confirming that the virtual world is all the support he needs, as he stares into the distance, lost in his own thoughts, while a small cat cries out in the street nearby, and the sound mirrors the harsh reality he faces in public, where onlookers whisper about his mother being in prison and a couple passes by calling him gross and disgusting, leaving Han Aram to wonder why they are staring, as the weight of their judgment makes him feel gloomy. While the boy mocks him to his girlfriend and laughs about him being the son of a murderer, leaving behind a desk covered in hateful, threatening graffiti. Han Aram stares at the desk covered in hateful graffiti, and he brushes off the insults by clinging to his secret refuge, finding the strength to walk away from his tormentors, knowing he has a completely different world waiting for him. So he turns the handle on his door to finally disconnect and logs into the virtual realm of Last Eden, a legendary online game where his parents first met. It remains the only place where he feels safe. Stepping into the game world, he feels the weight of reality lift, and the virtual ground beneath his boots feels more solid than his own life. Because in this space, he is an unstoppable force capable of anything, where the game guide calls out to him with a familiar voice, and Eve greets him with a gentle inquiry about his day, while Han Aram, clad in high-level armor, mumbles a response, remembering that Eve has been his constant companion since he started, and he reflects on how she grew while he stayed by her side, since she was the only one there during his darkest nights, and Eve notices his hesitation, reaching out to check on him, as she offers her unwavering support to her favorite player. Eve offers her promise to always stay by his side, but the game world suddenly drops a brutal notice of service termination, and Han Aram stares at his screen in the dead of night, realizing that once again everyone he cares about is abandoning him. Everything he built in this virtual space is about to be erased. His hard-earned inventory and massive fortune are flickering into nothingness, and even his hard-won rank as the #1 player loses all its meaning. Leaving him with only the crushing thought of losing Eve, a sense of pure desperation washes over him as the end approaches. While Eve remains blissfully unaware, asking if his day was good, then she prompts him to open up if something is wrong, repeating her promise that she will always be there for him, and Han Aram mutters back that she promised to stay by his side just as the system initiates the final service termination process. He feels the same abandonment he suffered from his own parents. With the server clock ticking down to just 3 seconds left, crying out that he does not want to be left alone again, while the system countdown drops to 2 seconds remaining, and he desperately pleads to continue their shared adventure together, before the server hits 0 and disconnects him for the very last time, wishing with everything he has for the virtual world to be his reality. Han Aram stares into the screen where Eve remains locked in a digital void. A strange system prompt flickers to life in the darkness. The text declares the game is not over yet, and Han Aram jolts awake as if pulled back into consciousness by something unseen, seeing a final message from Eve urging him to start the game together. Daylight floods into his room through the curtains. He checks his monitor and wonders if he just fell asleep at his desk, finding a logout notification still plastered across the screen. Realization hits that the previous moment was nothing but a dream. Later at school, Han Aram walks through the hallway with his head low. He hears a classmate call out his name before a massive object slams down onto his desk. Han Aram crashes to the floor as his chair gets kicked away. An aggressive student yells accusations about a strange item left on his desk. The student demands to know why Han Aram would leave something so disturbing behind, eyes wide and glowing with a strange light. Han Aram looks up to see the object. A severed goblin head sits on the wooden surface covered in blood. He mutters to himself that it is just a low-level monster from the game, while the surrounding students stare at him in total confusion and fear. Murmurs fill the classroom as the students whisper about Han Aram losing his mind. Everyone shifts their focus to a dead cat now lying on the desk. The aggressive student glares at Han Aram, calling him a murderer's brat. He steps closer to intimidate Han Aram, claiming he is just like his mother. Han Aram finally grabs the student by the collar. He demands to know the student's level. Intense blue light flares in Han Aram's eyes as he stares him down. He tells the kid that he is only level 1. The student swings his fist in rage, screaming at Han Aram. A mysterious hand suddenly appears to catch the student's arm in midair. The student yells out in panic as he realizes he cannot pull away. Digital distortion ripples across the arm, turning it into pixelated data. Shock washes over the student as he watches his limb disintegrate. Han Aram watches the arm get ripped completely from the student's body. The student screams in agony as he realizes his arm is gone. Blood splatters across the floor while the classmates scramble back in terror. Everyone watches in horror as the severed limb vanishes into thin air. A system notification fills the room, announcing that the long-awaited promise is finally being kept. Golden light erupts from the center of the room. A celestial figure descends as the game world begins to overwrite reality. Han Aram locks eyes with the divine being, while the celestial entity revels in the sensation of physical reality for the very first time. The surrounding students panic as they realize this is no longer a normal school day. Level indicators suddenly materialize above everyone's heads for all to see, and the realization hits them that the game's stats are now bleeding into their everyday lives. The divine figure addresses Han Aram directly, claiming she has been waiting for this moment. Her wings unfurl as she expresses a twisted kind of affection, recalling the shared trauma they endured in the game world, where Han Aram was trapped in his own personal nightmare, while she fought her own battles in a war-torn landscape. Now she proposes they dismantle the barriers between reality and the game. A system prompt appears asking Han Aram if he will join forces with her. She maintains her intense gaze, promising him that ruling this world will be simple, reminding him that he has already taken lives in the past to survive. Haunting memories of his previous kills flash back to Han Aram's mind. He mutters her name, Eve, with a sense of dawning recognition. His eyes turn a menacing red as the weight of his history settles in. A sudden, sickening sound echoes through the hall as Han Aram doubles over. The injured student on the floor begs for an ambulance while drowning in his own pain, and reality itself tears apart as the system claims his life for good. The blade in Han Aram's hand feels disturbingly familiar, an exact replica of his old weapon. He drives it forward without hesitation, cutting through the reality he once knew. The dying student collapses as Han Aram stands over him, cold and detached. His gaze shifts, sharp and predatory, ready to sever all remaining ties to his past. Eve watches from the sidelines, calling out his name, still banking on their twisted alliance. She thinks they are bound together. But her optimism is about to be shattered. A violent swing of the sword tears through the air, aimed directly at the celestial figure. The system prompt flashes before him, but Han Aram rejects the offer to play her game. A critical strike connects with devastating force, leaving no room for a counterattack. Impact ripples through the space as the force of his blow pulverizes everything in its path, towering over the wreckage. Han Aram questions if he ever really needed her at all. His level 250 crown glows, confirming his status as the undisputed rank 1. Eve's head is severed in a shower of feathers, her divine form falling apart. She barely manages to utter a warning about broken promises before her body disintegrates. Questioning why he stayed with her, she stares at him as her consciousness fades. Han Aram steps firmly onto her remains, mocking the durability of these so-called celestial NPCs. He pulls the blade free from her armor, answering her query with brutal honesty, revealing she was nothing more than a convenient replacement for the people he lost. The truth hits her hard, that he only kept her around because everyone else abandoned him, and his final words ring out, sealing her fate as the last connection he decides to sever. The desolate ruins of the women's prison loom ahead, a graveyard for those who could not keep pace. Han Aram stands over the wreckage of his former companion, declaring that he prefers strength over sentiment, turning his back on the carnage. He reflects on his status as the #1 ranker in this twisted world. His heavy boots crunch against the debris as he stalks forward with his blade drawn. The ground shudders under his relentless advance toward the next encounter. A twisted grin spreads across his face, mocking his opponent for falling so easily to his blade. He scoffs at the thought of an easy victory, craving a challenge that pushes him to his limit. Eve, still clinging to her divine pride, watches him with hollow eyes as her reality crumbles. Reaching out with a trembling hand, she tries to grasp the fading remnants of her authority, realizing at last that he is no different from the rest of the heartless players she once served. A blinding flash of energy erupts from her palm, a desperate final act of resistance against his cold cruelty. The shockwave shatters the air around them, forcing Han Aram to acknowledge the raw power of her dying defiance. He watches the light fade with a detached curiosity, his cold focus already shifting to the next threat. Memories surface of his earliest days in this hell, a time he almost forgot amidst all the slaughter, standing amidst the ruins. He recalls the specific low-level nightmare that once terrorized every novice player. Terror grips the nearby students as a grotesque, pulsing beast manifests from the shadows of the prison. A level 5 slime drips with lethal intent, its mindless hunger overriding everything in its path. The creature lashes out with blinding speed, its viscous form piercing through the nearest victim without mercy. Panic erupts among the survivors as they realize this low-level mob is far deadlier than they ever imagined. Screams fill the air while the remaining students scatter, realizing their survival odds have just hit rock bottom. The students scramble, screaming for help as the slime closes in to finish them off. Total chaos breaks out when they realize there is literally nowhere left to run. A flash of light cuts through the darkness like a guillotine, stopping the beast in its tracks. Han Aram stands there with a grin, declaring the victory a simple one-hit finish. He tears through the slime's defenses, turning the lethal threat into nothing more than data. With every strike, the creature disintegrates, unable to even scratch the rank 1 player. Another swing connects, and the monster lets out a final, pathetic shriek of agony. He does not even break a sweat, effortlessly carving his way through the low-level mobs. Eve watches the display with a cold, detached expression. Her patience clearly wearing thin, Han Aram mocks her lack of effort, asking if this is really the best she can do. The battlefield remains cluttered with the remnants of the mobs, yet none pose a real challenge. He taunts her further, running a finger along his blade as he questions the difficulty. She retorts that a game without any challenge would not be fun at all. Reaching out, she manipulates the very fabric of the arena, forcing a sudden shift. The surroundings dissolve into shimmering particles. Leaving them standing before a massive, glowing door, Han Aram stares at the imposing structure, wondering where in this hell he has arrived. The gate marks the entrance to the fabled Last Eden, a place of hidden danger. He steps closer to the threshold, his blade ready for whatever nightmare lurks inside. Shadows swirl to reveal boss-level entities looming in the darkness, each radiating pure malice. Eve looks down at him from the projection, waiting to see how he handles the real challenge. Eve signals the start of her special preparations, her gaze cold as the gate flares open. Han Aram readies his blade for the incoming wave, the sheer energy of the portal vibrating in the air. A grin spreads across his face as he finally activates a skill eager to test his apple slash ability. The combatants trade barbs about the difficulty, both looking for something more than the usual fodder. Eve drops the hammer by confirming this is only the first round of her twisted game. The realization sinks in as the first round concludes, leaving the arena floor littered with the fallen. A massive, distorted text overlay announces the start of round 2, shaking the very foundation of the room. Shadows coalesce into a hulking level 100 boss, the hoop of judgment emerging from the darkness. The creature surges forward with overwhelming malice, its chains rattling against the silence of the arena. Han Aram lunges into the fray, his blade glowing with intense focused light as he meets the boss head-on. A deafening roar echoes through the chamber as the two forces collide, the boss barely registering the initial strike. The slash cuts deep, bisecting the entity in one clean, fluid motion that defies its massive size. Notification screens flash to confirm round 2 is already cleared. The boss collapsing into nothingness, Han Aram wipes the blood from his lip, questioning where these endless waves are being generated from. He turns his attention toward the glowing wall of light. Clearly losing his patience with this drip feed of enemies, cracks begin to spiderweb across the arena's structural barrier, the force of his demand shattering the illusion. A monstrous, masked entity lunges from the breach, its jagged weapon clashing against Han Aram's sword. The two warriors trade lethal strikes, the speed of their exchange turning the area into a blur of steel. Han Aram parries the assault with brutal efficiency, pushing the creature back into the fading light. He stands over the wreckage, his blade resting on the floor as he dares Eve to send him everything at once. Han Aram unleashes a massive strike that tears through the arena's remaining defenses. System notifications trigger in rapid succession as he wipes out 3 more rounds of enemies instantly. His blade connects with the final wave of challengers, shattering their defenses in a singular explosive impact. Han Aram stands amidst the wreckage, questioning if this pathetic display is all his opponents can offer. He challenges the system to do better, his gaze locked onto the source of the hidden enemies. Beams of light erupt as he cuts down a hidden ambush of monsters lurking beneath the arena floor. Looking at his glowing blade, he realizes the sheer number of enemies that were concealed from sight. Han Aram descends into the newly opened depths, his sword carving a path through the dark. A flurry of brutal strikes tears through the hidden monsters, leaving nothing but carnage in his wake. The thrill of the slaughter hits him, and he laughs at the sensation of finally making contact. Memories of his father surface amidst the blood-soaked chaos, a grim realization settling in his mind. He remembers the violence of his past, the visceral reality of trading blows that he once witnessed. Mania takes hold as he revels in the destruction, his laughter echoing through the underground chamber. A system message appears in the void, acknowledging that he has finally pushed past the expected limits. Eve's voice flickers through the terminal, admitting that his power has far surpassed her initial projections. The system forces a jump, clearing stage 31 in a flash of blinding light. Round after round dissolves into binary noise as Han Aram obliterates the game's difficulty curve. The final stage notification pulses across the screen, signaling the end of the Last Eden. Standing atop the mountain of defeated foes, Han Aram is officially crowned the rank 1 player. He launches himself toward the final objective, ready to settle everything with the game's master. Han Aram surveys the carnage of the final stage, mocking the pathetic enemies that the system dared to throw his way. A final prompt flashes before him, demanding he choose between his original path and the system's offer. Eve reaches out with a desperate plea, begging him to return to the way things were before the slaughter began. The system presents a binary ultimatum to stay within the game's boundaries, but the choice is already weighing on him. He rejects the offer. And the reality of the game world begins to shatter around him like broken glass. Glitches tear through the digital landscape as the game master warns him that the chance for reconciliation is gone. Han Aram sneers at the empty threats, wondering what kind of nonsense the system is trying to feed him now. Confusion hits when he looks up, his eyes widening at a sudden, unnatural shift in the atmosphere. The sky itself starts to fracture. Glowing with a strange energy that should not exist in this virtual space, Eve stares down at him with cold detachment, confirming that this reality-warping chaos is the direct result of his defiance. Shock registers on his face as the gravity of her words finally sinks in. Scrolling text reveals the truth of the merger, explaining that the game master intended to overwrite the real world all along. Reality snaps as the barrier between the game and the physical world collapses under the strain of the forced integration. Nightmare creatures from the game code begin to leak through the rifts. Manifesting in the middle of a modern city, terrified pedestrians look toward the sky, watching in horror as game characters materialize in their peaceful streets. One confused student finds his uniform replaced by game armor, the sudden transformation leaving him breathless. Others around him notice their own clothes shifting into character avatars, the line between digital and physical completely erased. News broadcasts scramble to cover the chaos as reports of unidentified lifeforms flood every major school and district. Anchors struggle to explain the phenomenon as the world watches their own citizens turn into living game assets. The merger is officially underway, and Han Aram watches as his two worlds collide into a single dangerous nightmare. Rank 1 player Jang Hyuna emerges through the digital static, signaling the arrival of the top-tier game elites. Other high-ranking players tighten their grip on their gear, ready to claim their stake in this distorted new reality. Eve looms over the battlefield, her wings spread wide as she vows to hunt down every single survivor of the merger. Han Aram challenges her resolve, but Eve only offers a cold, knowing smile in response to his defiance. Digital corruption begins to tear through his avatar, erasing his identity as she questions if his character can even exist here. The system forcibly strips his stats, dragging his power level all the way down to a base level 1, declaring that his personal paradise is officially gone. She reaches out to seal his fate. Han Aram stares at his own hands in disbelief, watching his existence glitch and unravel before his eyes. She commands him to fight his way through the hell he chose, her red eyes burning with malicious intent. His high-level avatar vanishes completely, leaving him stranded in a desolate landscape with nothing but his own skin. Every piece of gear and every hard-earned stat point has disappeared, forcing him to confront his total loss of power because he dared to break their contract. She reveals the true extent of his punishment. A brutal character reset is her final answer to his betrayal, wiping away his legendary history in an instant. She mocks his new form, leaving Han Aram as nothing more than a pathetic-looking level 1 weakling. Laughter erupts from her as she revels in the sight of his complete humiliation. The sound of her mockery echoes through the ruins, taunting him for his sudden fall from grace. Han Aram pulls himself together, his gaze hardening as he asks her exactly what her point is. He steps forward and crushes a low-level mushroom creature under his boot, ignoring her taunts to focus on the immediate threat. The system registers the kill, and raw energy floods back into his veins as he forces a gain in experience. He levels up to 2, his eyes alight with a dangerous hunger as he claims this broken world as his own. Eve watches from the sidelines, her expression shifting as Han Aram continues his rapid ascent. Another level-up notification pings for Han Aram, pushing him straight to level 3. Maniacal laughter spills from his lips, the sheer absurdity of his situation fueling his drive. She recalls their earlier conversation, those eyes glowing with an intent that goes far beyond simple observation. Mocking him, Eve asks if he really thought his previous power was all she had to offer. Han Aram dashes forward in a blur, desperate to close the gap between his current state and his former glory. His movements are sharp, but a sudden impact halts him in his tracks before he can land a blow. The force of the collision sends him sprawling against the floor, gasping for air as the shock settles in. He stares at the ground, confused by the speed of the counterattack that just flattened him. Eve simply stands there, calm and collected, inviting him to continue their little game. A massive level 45 monster looms behind her, and she sneers at how pathetic Han Aram looks without his usual kit. He glances up, taking in the sheer scale of the threat now standing in his path. Those razor-sharp claws descend rapidly, forcing him to scramble away just to keep his head attached. Skidding across the tiles, Han Aram realizes the overwhelming disparity in their levels. A dark smirk touches his face as he realizes she would definitely pull a stunt like this. His hand reaches out to the side, gripping the handle of a common cleaning mop left in the corner. He stands tall, weapon in hand, deciding that if she wants a show, he will give her one. Swinging the crude tool with practiced precision, he strikes out at the encroaching beast. The creature screeches as the impact connects, proving that Han Aram can still find an opening. Acknowledging his low damage, he relies on his intimate knowledge of monster patterns to survive the onslaught. Han Aram mocks Eve for underestimating him, even with his massive level disadvantage. The monster lunges forward with terrifying speed, forcing him to parry the massive strike. Wood splinters fly as the mop handle takes the brunt of the beast's raw force, sliding across the floor. He manages to keep his distance while the creature continues its relentless assault. Sweat drips down his brow as he admits the monster is faster than his current build can handle. The creature's gaping maw snaps inches from his face, pushing his defenses to the absolute brink. Bone snaps under the pressure of the beast's grip, leaving him vulnerable for a split second. Internal damage racks his body as he takes a direct hit from the monster's heavy claw. Despite the pain, he lands a series of desperate hits, trying to whittle down that massive health pool. The beast recoils with a piercing screech, enraged that this low-level human dared to strike back. Eve watches the chaos from a distance, satisfied that her test is pushing him to his limits. Han Aram wipes blood from his lips, staring her down with a defiant and cold expression. She descends from the air to taunt him, claiming he is truly nothing without her guidance. He laughs at her arrogance, questioning if she really thinks he is that helpless on his own. Eve narrows her eyes, unmoved by his bravado as she prepares to exit the trial, turning her back on the fight. She offers a mocking wish of luck as she walks away. Glowing energy surrounds her, signaling that she is about to teleport out of this floor. She vanishes into a flash of light, leaving him alone with the beast. The monster immediately pounces on the opening, pinning him down in the center of the room. Looking up at the ceiling, Han Aram sighs, lamenting that the real fight was just beginning. The beast crashes down with enough force to rattle the floor, yet a mysterious high-tech interface flickers into view. An unexpected girl appears in the air above. Peering down at the chaos, Han Aram looks up in total confusion, wondering who could have possibly intercepted this death trap. She drops down to intervene, physically pushing the monster back from his position, pointing a finger at the target. She dismisses the beast as nothing more than a noisy pest with a casual flick of her wrist. She adjusts the system's difficulty settings, reality warps as the game environment shifts to her command. The monster slams into the ground under the weight of the new parameters. While Han Aram coughs up blood, reeling from the sheer intensity of the sudden transition, he lifts his head to identify his savior, but her identity remains a complete mystery. She raises a hand to activate a sequence, declaring that it is time for the music to begin. The system interface flares up with a new command titled Flower Dance. Rhythm bars slam down with devastating force, crushing the monster into the dirt. Another massive strike lands, turning the tide of the fight in a single beat. He watches from the floor, realizing that the rumors about top rankers from other games were true. This mysterious girl is clearly playing on a level he has never witnessed before. Her combo counter skyrockets through the hundreds, each note sinking with a blow against the beast. The display hits an all-combo milestone, signaling the total suppression of their enemy. The rhythm ends and she stands triumphant, leaving Han Aram to process the absolute slaughter. The monster is finally crushed into nothingness, and Han Aram looks up, catching a hand reaching down toward him. The mysterious newcomer claims she finally found him, revealing herself as the legendary rhythm warrior Jang Hyuna, but Han Aram brushes her off with a sharp demand to know why she interfered. She bashfully admits she only wanted to help out. The guy sighs. Disappointed that his fight was cut short while he was still having fun, clenching his fist against the floor in frustration. He mutters about how boring she made the whole thing, then he suddenly lunges forward, driving his blade straight through her. The girl stands frozen in shock as the steel pierces her eyes widen in total confusion, falling to her knees while demanding to know why he would do this. Jang Hyuna tries to stabilize the guy. But Han Aram collapses completely as she frantically calls for him to wake up. She refuses to accept that he is dying right in front of her. His body hits the floor with a heavy thud. An intense shockwave erupts from her gear, knocking her backward. She screams in absolute panic and scrambles away from the scene, peering back from the shadows as the reality of the situation hits her. Chaos erupts as the onlookers realize the target is actually human, but the blade finds its mark regardless. Blood sprays across the ground as the strike lands with brutal finality. A primal scream tears through the air while the victim falls. The massive paw of the attacker looms over the carnage. Han Aram stands over the kneeling girl, looming like a shadow. She looks up and recognizes the fallen Jang Hyuna, the top-ranked rhythm warrior. The animal fighter Kang Jaeyeon begs for mercy while clinging to the hope of their friendship. Han Aram stares down at the pleas with cold, detached eyes. The desperate girl insists they are still friends. A flash of red light bisects her vision as the final blow connects. Experience points flood into the system, marking the kill as complete. The girl watches in disbelief as the reality of the slaughter sets in. His level jumps to 249, showing the massive gain from the hunt. The digital interface flickers as the climb continues. Hitting level 250 triggers a satisfaction that Han Aram barely hides. She stands trembling at the sight of the rank 1 player's ruthless efficiency. Han Aram smiles, reveling in the power as he declares the real game has finally begun. The girl rushes forward to embrace him, sobbing with relief that he survived. She clutches him tightly, still unable to process the carnage left in his wake. Han Aram finally snaps and tells the girl she has been getting on his nerves, pinning her down with a sharp, sudden movement that cuts her sobbing short. The rank 1 player demands to know who she thinks she is. She stammers that she only watched him from afar and thought they were similar souls. A cold, dark smirk spreads across his face as he listens to her excuses. The girl claims she only wanted to help him against those who looked down on him. Han Aram realizes she was the one pulling the strings behind his back all along. His massive sword slams into the ground, narrowly missing her as the tension spikes. She freezes in pure terror, finally sensing the killing intent radiating from him. He ignores her fear and asks how long a ranker can actually hold out against him. Her eyes widen in sudden realization that he is not playing anymore. The floor beneath them shatters as he launches a brutal, overwhelming strike. Debris explodes into the air, forcing her to scramble backward to escape the impact. The girl screams for Han Aram to wait and listen, but he is already closing the distance. She tries to plead her case while dodging his relentless heavy swings. He strikes again, forcing her to grunt in pain as she narrowly avoids a fatal hit. Stumbling back, she loses her footing and crashes hard onto the concrete. Her desperate cries for him to listen go ignored as he prepares the finishing move. He lunges forward with his blade, slicing through the space where she just was, looking down at his frantic, stumbling target. Han Aram mocks the clumsiness of her defense. Han Aram notes her evasive maneuvers are suspiciously perfect, his patience wearing thin as he glares at the retreating girl, calling her out for being a nuisance while he cuts through the air. The girl barely deflects his strike with a concealed weapon, confusion washing over her as she checks the tool she used to block him. Han Aram demands to know why she refuses to fight back, activating his X-skill sword Rain to flood the area with lethal blades. He taunts her to show him some actual effort. The girl screams as the barrage of dark swords crashes down around her. Blades hammer into the ground, completely surrounding her position. She points at Han Aram while desperately shouting for him to stop, claiming she has no intention of engaging him in combat. Golden magic circles appear in the air as she desperately deflects his onslaught. Han Aram pauses to evaluate the strange defensive ability she is using, wondering aloud if she is incapable of anything other than blocking. His blades shatter against her glowing barrier, causing her to panic. She keeps tapping the air to maintain her shield as the combo counter climbs. Unimpressed by her purely defensive playstyle, he prepares to overwhelm her, questioning if she even cares about her own survival. He closes the gap with his heavy blade, ready to shatter her resolve. Jang Hyuna reveals her status as a ranker, claiming she can fight back while mocking Han Aram. Recognition sparks in his eyes as he realizes she is a multi-game ranker. A manic grin spreads across his face, clearly thrilled to finally have a real challenge. He lunges forward and delivers a massive strike that obliterates the immediate area. The sheer force of the impact tears through the map and sends shockwaves across the entire field. Civilians nearby scatter in total panic as the ground erupts from his overwhelming power. Jang Hyuna watches the chaos unfold, shouting for the bystanders to get out of the way. Crackling energy surges around her as she desperately attempts to regain control of the situation. They clash again in a blur of motion, her defensive skills barely holding against his relentless onslaught. Jang Hyuna realizes her usual tactics are failing, visibly shaken by his sheer destructive capability. Han Aram laughs at her confusion, taunting her about his hidden sub-character. She tries to reset her character to escape the encounter. A system error flashes on her screen, signaling that her character cannot be deleted. Disbelief washes over Jang Hyuna as she realizes she is truly trapped. A mysterious man watches the scene from a distance, noting how strange it is that her abilities fail to affect him. This observer identifies himself as a character created on Han Aram's server. Jang Hyuna demands to know his identity. The stranger just smiles, reveling in the mystery of his own presence. He reveals he is an NPC summoned through her own actions. Before she can react, the mysterious NPC seizes control of the body, discarding it like a used tool. The mysterious NPC stares out from behind Jang Hyona's eyes, finally free. He grips his own stolen head with a satisfying crunch. Relishing the sensation of a physical form, Jang Hyuna stands helpless in the void. Her wings limp as her consciousness is pushed aside. The NPC steps forward, his boots clicking on the floor as he addresses his creator, calling himself Nemesis. He thanks Han Aram for pulling him out of the game and into reality. They stand in the middle of a desolate landscape, the contrast between the angel-winged girl and the dapper man striking. Nemesis mocks Jang Hyuna, telling her she looks like a man who just lost everything. He compares her situation to a high-stakes gamble gone wrong, represented by the spinning card symbols at his feet. Jang Hyuna snaps back at him, demanding he stop talking as her anger flares. The NPC just smiles, fanning out a deck of cards while offering his help with a condescending tone. He pulls a card featuring a hangman's noose, taunting her about her lack of rank. Nemesis explains that rankers are fickle, so he decides to craft a new ranking for her instead. Magic swirls around his fingers as he manifests an ace card. Declaring his intent to forge his own hierarchy, he proposes a deal, noting he does not want to be killed by a powerful ranker the moment he arrives in the world. Tossing cards into the air, the NPC muses that while controlling existing rankers is tough, tempting them is easy. His cards display various figures, from dancers to soldiers, symbolizing his plan to place bets on these broken people. Holding up a final card, he offers this penalty-free deal to the trapped Jang Hyuna. The perspective shifts to a chaotic city street where gridlocked traffic blares in the distance. A driver sits frustrated in his car, glancing at his phone screen which displays news about rankers. He complains to his passenger about the strange reports, unaware that the game is already spilling into their world. The driver scoffs at the viral clips of rankers, convinced they are all just clever deepfakes. His passenger laughs along, joking that if their son possessed such powers, he would have conquered the world by now, wishing aloud that they were living in a game where they could just plow through this gridlock. Suddenly his eyes lock onto something impossible ahead. A monstrous vehicle tears through the traffic, flipping cars into the air like toys. Disbelief hits as they realize the oncoming menace is barreling right toward them. The demonic sports car swerves into the wrong lane with reckless abandon. Metal crunches and chaos erupts as the vehicle slams through the line, leaving wreckage in its wake. The driver behind the wheel of that beast relishes the rush. Laughing at how long it has been since he drove this wildly, feeling truly alive for the first time, he pushes the machine to its limit. Elsewhere, Han Aram stands over the ruins, his blade drawn and pointed toward the white-haired woman. Eve tries to de-escalate the tension, claiming she is only there to offer him assistance. Han Aram sneers at the idea of her helping someone like him. He coldly dismisses her, branding her as nothing more than a plaything in his eyes. The demonic sports car screeches to a halt nearby, interrupting their confrontation. Han Aram narrows his eyes, sensing a strange presence emanating from the new arrival. The vehicle drifts around them in a blur of speed, kicking up dust and debris across the battlefield. Tension spikes as Han Aram tracks the movement, wondering who dared to interfere. Eve watches the car with an unreadable expression, seemingly knowing exactly who is driving. The driver exits the vehicle, finally revealing himself to Han Aram as the chaos reaches a boiling point. The devilish driver revs his engine, inviting everyone to a deadly little spin, and he drifts circles around Han Aram and Eve, turning the battlefield into a high-speed track. Han Aram plants his heavy blade into the dirt to stabilize his stance. He prepares for the incoming rush while the car kicks up a storm of debris. The driver mocks Han Aram's ranker status. Clearly unimpressed by the legendary fighter, Eve calls out the intruders as trash for hunting her down. Her taunt does not even faze the driver, who brushes off the insult with a sinister grin. He warns her that she will be roadkill under his wheels in no time at all. Han Aram notices a foul, putrid scent radiating from the car. He tells the driver that he hopes the fight will be at least somewhat entertaining. The car lunges forward with explosive speed. Slamming into Han Aram's defensive position, Eve watches in disbelief as the high-speed collision rocks the entire area. The driver gloats about his superior speed, telling Han Aram to keep talking if he can. Han Aram acknowledges the driver's insane pace. Realizing he is dealing with a speedster, he stares the driver down, questioning if that is truly all the guy has to offer. The vehicle charges again, but Han Aram tracks the motion perfectly this time. The driver is genuinely surprised that a human managed to block his assault. He vows to push the pace even harder to see how long Han Aram can survive. Continuous strikes rain down on Han Aram, testing the limits of his legendary defense. The Rancor holds his ground against the barrage, unfazed by the relentless metallic assault. Han Aram brushes off the assault, calling the driver's performance boring. The driver retaliates with a brutal high-speed strike that forces Han Aram to recoil in pain, mocking the Rancor as a mere fly despite his status. The driver clearly is not done yet. The Rancor takes the insult in stride, even while nursing his wounds from the impact. The demonic car pilot claims he has barely even tapped into his engine's true potential. Another blistering attack cuts through the air, forcing Han Aram to narrowly dodge the lethal trajectory. Despite the chaos, Han Aram chuckles, wondering if he actually just saw something move. The driver reveals he has one final boost charge remaining to turn the tide. Flames erupt from the car's exhaust as the driver swears he will grind the Rancor into dust. Eve attempts to step into the fray to assist, but Han Aram holds her back. Eve warns Han Aram that the next incoming attack is far too dangerous to tank alone. He admits that he has been reading the driver's movements from the very start. Han Aram insists that this is his game and Eve needs to stay out of his business. He turns his gaze toward the driver, promising that the car is next on his list. The driver screams that a 2-on-1 confrontation is completely against the rules. Han Aram keeps his eyes locked on the car, analyzing the mechanics of that earlier boost. He realizes the car's gauge fills up every time that specific speed skill is activated. The Rancor decides his main objective is to prevent the driver from ever using that gauge again. He lunges forward with a precision strike, aiming to shut down the car's mobility. The driver laughs off the attempt, claiming Han Aram's attacks are simply too slow to catch him. Han Aram locks his gaze onto the incoming vehicle, eyes glowing with lethal intent. He unleashes a series of rapid sword swings to intercept the car's path. Every strike cuts through the air, but the driver narrowly drifts around the blades. The driver taunts Han Aram for his supposedly pathetic speed and lack of aggression. He laughs, claiming the Rancor's defense is nothing but molasses in the face of his car, maneuvering away with ease. The driver circles back to keep the pressure on. Han Aram drives his blade deep into the earth, anchoring himself to the ground. He declares he has the perfect skill to deal with this wild animal. The driver pauses for a split second, confused by why the Rancor is digging into the dirt. A massive blue aura expands from the sword's point, instantly trapping the vehicle in its radius. The system confirms the activation of the Zeroth advancement skill. In confinement, this ability forces the car to a grinding halt as the earth begins to swallow it whole. The driver struggles as the ground turns into a heavy, binding prison beneath his wheels. Han Aram watches the vehicle sink, telling the driver he will not be running anywhere else. Shadows rise up to solidify the containment, locking the car in place. Glowing eyes flare in the dark, signaling the final phase of the trap. A pillar of raw energy erupts from the ground directly beneath the immobilized car. The driver desperately tries to rev his engine, calling the Rancor a total noob. He realizes too late that racing on the ground was a fatal mistake. The massive blast consumes the entire area, obliterating the driver's mobility in one final strike. The driver mocks Han Aram for being a slow Rancor, but Han Aram hits back, calling him a loud bird who cannot even run on his own legs, taunting the driver with a sharp grin as the wreckage of his car settles. The vehicle is completely mangled, leaving the driver unable to move. He lets out a pained groan while staring down the blade of the Rancor. Suddenly, the car's engine ignites with a desperate boost, launching it forward despite the damage. A massive explosion of force tears through the area as the vehicle charges nearby. A witness blinks in confusion at the sudden, violent surge of energy. Realizing the car is hurtling toward them, they scramble to stay out of the path. A small companion cries out to pull Han Aram away from the incoming collision. The driver screams about how Han Aram tried to stop his boost and failed. Han Aram calmly activates his counter-strike skill to meet the head-on assault. He mocks the driver for his pathetic top speed, keeping his blade held steady. The force of the collision sends a shockwave rippling through the city street. The driver pushes his engine into max output mode, desperate to crush his opponent. A blinding flash of energy erupts, clearing the path as the car is deflected. The blast tears through the landscape, forcing bystanders to scatter for safety. The witness lands hard after the debris clears, startled by the sheer intensity of the fight. Checking themselves for wounds, they wonder what Han Aram is actually planning. Looking toward the massive breach in the wall, they can only watch as the battle rages on. The bridge takes a massive hit as the collision debris begins to settle. Han Aram drops to a knee amidst the smoke, his legendary weapon finally snapping under the pressure, staring down at the broken shards in his grip. He acknowledges that his main gear is finished. The driver emerges from the wreckage to taunt him, assuming Han Aram is defenseless and ready to fold, mocking the lack of a weapon. The driver presses his advantage while Han Aram stays silent. Noting that the driver's car is finally out of juice, Han Aram realizes the tables are about to turn even without the boost. The driver refuses to back down, thinking he still has the upper hand. Han Aram lunges forward in a blur, piercing straight through the driver's defenses with a sudden strike. Looking down at the blade embedded in his own vehicle, the driver realizes his mistake too late, explaining that the broken greatsword was merely a vessel for his true hidden arsenal. Hanaram reveals his strategy. The system confirms the destruction of his primary weapon as the materials are instantly reclaimed for a new purpose. Dual daggers materialize in his hands, replacing the bulky sword with a specialized high-speed tool, blocking the driver's desperate counterattack with his new twin blades. Hanaram prepares to finish the fight, locking his eyes on the target. He declares a high-speed duel, fully embracing his new status as a butcher.